Hello, everyone, and welcome to the pilot episode of Power Platform This and That. My name is Rory Neary, and I'm joined today by Sarah Guest, a friend and colleague of a number of years. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Rory. Thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Yes, yeah, just a slight pressure situation for both of us, as this is the pilot episode. So, yeah, this is episode. It's not even episode number one. It's the pilot episode. And when I was getting started with this, I wanted to give the people that were going to come on later episodes an opportunity to see how the podcast would run. So that's the idea with this. So for this episode, I am going to play the role of the guest, and Sarah is going to play the role of the, I guess, presenter.
Yeah.
So I've teed Sarah up with a number of questions because the idea with this is that we will ask people in the community the same questions on the podcast and we'll just see what they come up with. So I'm now going to hand over to you, Sarah, to
Thank
then
you.
be the presenter and ask me the questions I asked you to ask me. It's a little bit kind of Inception like, I think. Okay, go,
Yeah,
Sarah.
we will give it a go. So, first question for you, Rory, is why have you decided to start a podcast?
Very good question. I wonder why you asked that. S- yeah, so why did I start this? Well, I would say that I don't know, maybe over the last maybe 12, 18 months, I think from a community contributions point of view, I've kind of had a bit of mental block. There's been so many things going on in the community and technically wise that it's hard really to know what to talk about or how to be involved in the community and what did I know the most about. So there are a whole heap of reasons why I wanted to start the podcast. Number one, I wanted to have an opportunity to get together with my friends in the community and talk Power Platform. So that's number one. You have to enjoy it yourself for it to be something that's got some kind of longevity. Number two, I want it to be fun. That's part of this. Um, I was thinking about my target audience and I thought about, well, who is this for? And the idea is this is for people that are relatively new to the Power Platform or they are just friends of mine within the community. So if I do a bit of name dropping, I'm thinking about Power Platform Boost podcast
Yeah.
and how what am I doing when I'm listening to that? Well, I'm actually, I'm in the garden. I might be driving somewhere, and I
Yeah.
just and I think that when I looked across, call it although there are thousands of podcasts to choose from, if you specifically looked at Power Platform, there aren't actually that many of them,
Yeah.
and sadly, we've also lost the Power Platform Sprint Zero podcast recently. And I'm not doing it. I'm not starting this podcast to compete in any way with what they did because they had their own style that they wanted to their way of talking to people. But it just means that if you did want to learn a little bit about Power Platform, there's not that many places to go to from a podcast point of view. I like podcasts and, maybe other people like podcasts too. So, and I also, when I was listening to various podcasts, sometimes I was going away from these podcasts and thinking, oh, I don't really. It was fun, but I don't know how much I actually learned in that
Yeah.
podcast. And I'm not necessarily the brightest of chaps, so it kind of need to be that information to be provided to me in, let's say, in a call it a simplistic form.
Yeah.
Um,
Easy to understand. That's what we're aiming for, isn't it, with this
exactly,
podcast? No
easy for
jargon.
easy for Rory to understand. Yeah. So, and I also think I don't know about you, Sarah, but with I don't know, let's say the various social media platforms, and I'm probably really thinking about LinkedIn. I'm thinking about my feed. I don't know about you, but over the last 12, 18 months, I feel like the feed I have from LinkedIn has now changed. And I have to
Definitely.
do, yeah, and I have to do more scrolling to get to something that is useful to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and some things are very, very technical, in great technical detail, aren't they? And sometimes you just want some quick tips or just to read something that, or listen to something that somebody's found really useful.
Yeah. So, quite a long list of reasons why I wanted to do a podcast. but hopefully they're all good reasons. Yeah, so that's why I'm starting the podcast.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to connect with people, catch up with people, and find out a bit about what some of your friends think about Power Platform.
Absolutely, yeah,
So,
lovely.
we're going to limit this just to a couple of minutes. Just tell us a little bit about your career so far. I know I've been lucky enough to work with you as a colleague in the past, but give us a brief summary about your career.
Okay, so for the purposes of other people going on to the podcast, my idea here is I didn't want to have a long list of everything the person has ever done. So I'm going to give you almost like, let's just imagine it as being the 2 minute, how did you get to here, Rory? So we start off, okay, okay, goes to school, goes to university, comes out of university, not quite sure what to do, but his dad was an accountant, so Rory becomes an accountant. So he does that and studies for that for, a number of years, then goes I did another year as a chartered accountant, and then moved into a role within a company. And I did that role for many, many years. So I became, I guess, call it moved up the ranks and then became group financial controller. But that was a kind of 15-year process. Probably more than that, actually. I'm not good with dates and so on, but let's just say it was 15 years to get within that particular career, and I got to the point within it where I just didn't really see where it was going. I didn't want to do accountancy, and so I stopped doing that. And I'm going to speed up as well because I'm going to stop. I stopped doing the accountancy. Okay, then what did Rory do? I didn't think I'd touch another number, but I then did touch other numbers because I knew Power Query. Because I knew Power Query, I was able to start. I jumped into Power BI. I then got a contract with Biffa to do Power BI. I saw the Power Platform, thought it was cool, got myself my own tenant, and then started building things with it. And then realised after a year on this. Contract that I realised I could be a contractor, which was in and around the same time my father-in-law died, and I thought, crikey, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it soon now. And so I then became a contractor and then did that, worked in Parliament for 9 months, then worked in Reckitt Coleman, who are fast moving consumer goods for a couple of years. And then some legal changes came into the UK that meant that it made more sense to go and work for a partner. I worked for
Yeah.
a partner, one partner. I thought, oh, it didn't quite suit me, all the task switching and so on. And then I worked for another partner thinking that would be different. And it wasn't. So,
No.
so for me personally, too much task switching. And throughout this whole journey, I've been doing, I've created courses and all sorts of things. So that gives you a little bit of a potted history. There were lots more community things along the way, traveling to loads of places, training people, and that takes me to where we are today, roughly speaking. I don't know if
Fantastic.
that was 2 minutes.
A very quick 2 minutes. Yeah, and I was lucky enough when you were working for one of those companies to work with you, and luckily for me, learn loads from you. Definitely on the Power BI side, lots of my Power BI knowledge and a passion for Power BI as well, I think, has come from you. So thank you for that. Very, very short version of what you like to do in your spare time
Okay,
out of work,
yeah, out of work. Board games,
which we've
yeah.
played a few of, both quite competitive.
Yeah, in fact, my leaving do, we all got together and we played this game which is based in these Celtic islands and where you're trying to become the leader of the islands and it's called Inish and as a group we all got together. It was very funny because
It was great fun.
we had a new starter and you started punching him and he started punching you, but he was doing it in a really polite way.
Let's keep apologising to each other for punching each other so much.
So board games, and more recently, I was kind of been singing for a few years and doing a bit of a cappella and so on. But I've got a little bit more into that recently. So I started taking singing lessons and so on, and then I also started playing the guitar, and so I've been call it leaning into that a bit more. I also do, I guess, what we call urban sketching, live sketching. So I'll kind of just turn up to a place and I'll just, I'll draw musicians and what have you. So that gives you a bit of an idea. And there's also friends and family and all those sorts of good things.
Yeah, and we definitely need to book another open mic night because I really enjoyed that
Indeed,
the
yeah.
last time. Fantastic. So, moving on to our sort of theme then for the podcast, we're going to be talking about something old, we're going to be talking about something new, something borrowed, and something blue. So, the first question. We're focusing on the something old theme here. Name something old in the Power Platform that you still think is really neat. And I'm very interested to hear this answer.
Yeah, and so was I. I mean, I tried to be really clever about this, and then I just thought, do you know what? I really think image columns are just, they blow my mind. Because I come from an Excel world, and if you, it just wouldn't work in the same way. The idea that you can have a column within a table that has got images in it, and then you can build an app that can then see those images. But the reason why it's cool is because the image isn't actually in the table itself, it's a
Yeah,
reference to the image.
I was
So
going
it
to say
then,
let's go no jargon, very very easy speak. How does it actually work then?
well, that's a bit unfair. Well, I'm not quite sure, but where
Magic.
where is the image really? The image
Yeah,
is really in blob storage. So blob storage is a way of storing large files. I mean, I don't make this thing, but that's
yeah,
broadly speaking. So it's a place which is capable of housing large files. But because you use it in the context of Dataverse, now what is Dataverse? Dataverse is the database that is integral to Power Platform. You don't have to build every product within Dataverse using a Dataverse database, but in the context of my answer, it is image columns within a Dataverse database and a column within a table within that. And I think that just it just says a lot about Power Platform, the fact that it's connected to different things, which I
yeah,
think is really neat. And I think I know that Sarah, when you've worked with documents and images, you might choose to store them in different places, which is absolutely fine. But there are times when actually it is just so easy to do it that you might, if you only had, I don't know, let's say 20 images, and
yeah.
it was, I don't know, your offices or something like that, and you wanted to say and do those images of those offices, why would you not use it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on how many images you store in, doesn't it? But it is something I know when I first started building an app and I could just put an image in and it was just saved in Dataverse. It was a little bit like, oh, wow. But yeah, lots of the projects that I've worked on, we've looked at integrating with SharePoint for storing images and documents. But yeah, that functionality in Dataverse is, like you say, something very old. It's been around for a long time, but very, very cool. So, something new in the Power Platform, that's what we're going to talk about now. Something maybe coming out in preview or something that you're looking forward to using.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Unfortunately, I did go for something that was kind of older, but it is still in preview,
Okay.
right?
Some
Right.
things are in preview for quite a while,
Yeah,
aren't they?
there they are. And I went with modern controls. Now,
Yeah.
modern controls are in preview, so I'm okay to say that they're new.
Yeah.
But and they have been in preview for a while. I can't say what the reason is for them being in preview. Probably because one of the bits of the controls is in preview, which means they're all in preview.
Yeah. And what type of app are you talking about? You're talking about modern controls in a Canvas app? Just to
Correct, yeah.
clarify for people? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So modern controls in a Canvas app. So if I'm going to close my eyes, if you're in building a Canvas app, you would go to the settings, then you go to updates, and then you would see your option to turn on modern controls and themes. You'd turn it on, and they would basically appear. Now, why is that interesting? Now, interesting, I am wearing a very, very old t-shirt for Power Apps. So it's actually written with Power Apps all one word, and it's got the old logo. But the reason why I mention it is because the classic controls are that old.
Hmm.
They are that old. And so when I see I don't know, let's say I call it a blog post or anything like that, and I see it using the classic controls, I'm kind of immediately thinking, how old is this thing? Like it could be,
Yeah.
this post could be like really old. But the thing to bear in mind with modern controls is they behave in different ways. They can catch you out in very interesting ways. For example, the text box. You can type something into a text box, like a text input. If you press enter, nothing happens. It
Yeah.
doesn't know that it's happened. Whereas if you did the same thing with a text input, which is classic, and pressed enter, the thing would happen. The I don't know, filter or whatever it was would start happening. So maybe that's the sort of thing that they're working on. I don't know, but I still think that the apps that you make when you build your canvas apps using modern controls, they just look so much better.
Yeah, and we were saying the same about certain drop downs in the modern control. They look so much nicer. But what you don't want to do is have a mix of them because then that doesn't look good. So you've got to decide whether you're going for the old style or the new style
Yeah,
and keep
yeah,
that
and it is
continuity.
it is an interesting one just from a call it a development point of view that typically when you're building things and you're building things in production, the recommendation would to be to not use things that are in preview because things that are in preview might change. I would probably say the benefits outweigh the risk that it might change. Yeah, so I would be inclined to go for it
Yeah,
because do you really want an app you're going to have to completely need to rewrite? Probably not.
cool.
Lovely.
Fantastic. So let's move on to now something borrowed. So we're going to talk about something that somebody else has created in the Power Platform world that you think is worth taking a look at, or maybe you've used, or you want to kind of share so that other people can go and check this out.
Okay, so there were two things I could have gone for. So, and I'm going to allow somebody else to pick up on Matt Devaney's posts because they're really cool.
Yeah,
But he's a very clever chap, and not every single one of his posts they're beautifully laid out. They are just so easy to read. But he's a clever chap, and not all of the posts that he would do would be for new users of Power Platform. So I then thought, well, actually, who within of whose content do I think is really cool? Well, I actually like Lisa Crosby's content. I'm not sure what her channel is actually called. Probably just called Lisa Crosby. Um, but I really like her content. I really like Lisa. She's a lovely person to be around, and her personality shines through in her YouTube videos. And she is extremely good at explaining things in simple ways. And it is not always easy to explain complex things in simple ways. You've got to choose what to tell people, when to tell people, all those sorts of things. And so I remember when she first started bringing her videos out, and I thought these are really good. These are really, really good. And she's gone from strength to strength. And so I think there's a lot of videos of something something in 10 minutes, something something in 15 minutes. And I would think for our new users to Power Platform, go and take a look at Lisa's content. It's really good, very accessible, and you won't feel like it was time that you didn't spend well.
she definitely has a very good way of explaining things and making something quite complicated seem quite simple to do. She's very good at giving like step-by-step instructions. I've definitely watched lots of her videos. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that one. And something blue, something that makes you a little bit mad or you get maybe a little bit frustrated with in the Power Platform.
Now, this was easy. Now, I could have easily said, right? I could have easily said, why did you start this podcast? And I could have easily said, because I want to talk about this one thing. And the one thing is environment variables, right? How big are environment variables allowed to be? What is the maximum size of an environment variable, right?
Yeah,
You can actually see the table, right?
yeah,
I'll explain why it's important to the listeners in a minute, but you can fit 2,000 characters in there, right?
okay,
And the box that you get to write into will
yes,
fit, I don't think it'll fit 50. So it's almost, and not only does it own, not only 50 characters, I'm getting mad. I'm on the screen. If you're not watching YouTube, then Rory's getting. You can see I'm going red here. But like, not only is it 50 characters, but there's all this white space underneath it that does nothing. It's like you think, and so then you kind of going, you get your mouse and you're cursing, you're scrolling across and checking what's in there, and you can put a JSON. So the reason why is this important for our listeners?
Yeah, I
Now,
was going to say take it a step back and
yeah,
explain what we mean by environment variables first, if people aren't sure or haven't used them.
absolutely, yeah.
When would we use them?
So to talk about environment variables, we also talk about application lifecycle management. So what is application lifecycle management? Well, let's think about an Excel spreadsheet, right? Everything in Excel pretty well is production. So like, there's no concept of, well, I'm just working on this bit of the spreadsheet and it'll soon be ready. And then once it's ready, I'll put it into test and then all my testers will test it and then I'll put it into production. No, you just basically change your spreadsheet and if it works, great. If it doesn't work,
You're in trouble.
then too bad. But the Power Platform answer to that is to have environments. So we get to talk about environments. So and the reason why we have environment variables is because we might have important values that we want to have as different values between development, test, and production. And so for that, it could be like version numbers, it could be email addresses that the thing goes to, it could be a true or false statement to say whether or not, I don't know, a button's available in an app or something like that, or whether or not the flow carries on running, whatever it might be. You wouldn't really want to have that as data in a table, as in like a table that you kind of like added things into, because it wouldn't be a very powerful way of doing your application lifecycle management. So for the purposes of people listening, environment variables are important because you want to be able to get your product out there, have people working with it, but you want to be able to carry on developing. So environment variables are a way of having stored values that are important to how your product works. And the box is so small, it is more difficult for the developers to even know what's in the field.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you're referencing like a SharePoint site and you're trying to see what SharePoint site is selected, it's really difficult to see the full URL of the SharePoint site. So yeah, definitely. And I would imagine quite an easy thing to fix. We just got to contact the right people to who are able to fix something like that. But yeah, it can be very, very frustrating. Um,
I just thought the rant version would be far more effective.
if we get enough people ranting on podcasts about it, maybe Microsoft will update it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I've
So
really enjoyed those answers to those questions. To finish off our podcast, we are going to do something a little bit different, and you're going to tell us about a desert island disc that you're going to select.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is part of the reason why I'm doing this thing. I did actually want to add another question, if that's all right, Sarah, before
Oh,
we do this.
yes,
Would that be all right? So
it's
I'll
your
ask you.
it's your.
So what I want to do is I want to ask people, they're kind of like, hey, what's your contribution to Power Platform that you're most proud of? I
Okay,
think that'd
yeah.
be quite fun because on the one hand, we've asked people what has somebody else done in, I don't know, community, whatever it is that they've done that you think is cool. I think it's probably a good idea to ask people what they have done that they think is cool as well. So my answer to that would be, well, I'll tell you about the thing I've struck through. So I wrote a really, really, really long Canvas apps course. It was 300 lessons long. This is a monster, this thing. About a month after I wrote it, all of the branding changed. So, and it was, fair enough. These things happen. But that isn't the thing that I'm most proud of. I think the thing I'm most proud of is actually the work that I've done with the Microsoft Power Up program. Because we have created a course for people to people who've never used Power Platform to learn about Power Platform, takes them through on this journey through all the different products. I've thought really, really hard about what the curriculum might be did I did the I worked initially with Charlie Phipps on it and
Yeah.
365 Talent Pool and my colleagues over in there was Dimpy Gandhi in the first round and we've had other members of Microsoft take on the baton this time round and I just think it's really good. I'm really happy that that sometimes you look back on things that you've done and thought, oh, it could be so much better. And yes, there will always be those times when things can be better, but it was it was the best I could do.
And
Absolute best.
just recap for our listeners then, what areas of the Power Platform does it actually cover? If they were thinking of signing up for it, what will they learn about?
So they would learn about, first of all, Dataverse. Um, and then, so we talk about Dataverse and effectively the Dataverse database, a little bit about data modeling. Then we'll build model-driven apps. What are model-driven apps? They're essentially a particular type of app with a particular type of user interface that really only ever looks at Dataverse tables. But they're really cool. I absolutely love them. We then move on to building Canvas apps. So Canvas apps are where you've got a lot more control over the user interface. And then after that, we then segue into Power Automate. And then in Power Automate, you get to, well, for want of a better word, automate data related tasks. And it's really an introduction. In Power Automate, you could probably learn it for the next 100 years and not get to the bottom of it. So, but it's an introduction to Power Automate. And then we finish off by using Power BI to visualize the data.
Fantastic. And I presume we can share a link below with if people want to sign up for that. Can they sign up at any time, or is it at certain times the different cohorts start?
Yeah, that's a good point actually. So you effectively you kind of request to join Power Up, and then you would be put into a cohort of people because it is actually the support that they have put in place is really excellent. So there are drop-in sessions that you can get to, you can ask questions, and right at the end of the whole process there is a challenge where you get given a Power Platform set of tasks to essentially confirm to you and to the program that you have learned the things that the program wanted you to learn about.
Fantastic. And any cost, or can people sign up for free?
It's actually completely free. So essentially, you need an internet connection and a computer.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and you'll be building all the apps on so that there is a they have you'll be given a username to a Power Platform tenant, and you'll have to do MFA, so a multi-factor authentication. So yes, you would need a phone and so on, and download the authenticator app. But really, is it's quite it's free,
Yeah.
and I think the only thing is the only commitment is time. You
Time.
know,
Yeah.
you've you got to lean into it. You've got to commit to this thing.
But a great place for people to start that are looking to come into the Power Platform and find out a bit more. And looks great on your CV as well if you've completed that. Yeah,
Indeed.
definitely would recommend it. I've seen lots and lots of posts on LinkedIn as well that people have completed the course, giving it lots and lots of good feedback. So definitely worth checking out.
That is good. Right. So should we go back
So,
to the other question?
yes, back to my favourite part. This is the bit I'm really looking forward to. Tell us about what you've chosen for your desert island disc.
So my desert island disc is due to I still haven't found what I'm looking for. The lyrics are amazing. Um, like the song is amazing. It's great to play it. Yeah, I think it speaks to at least some of the journey that I've gone on with Power Platform of about maybe this idea of having done things, but then still quite not quite knowing have I done everything? What if that was it? What would that be? Would that be enough? And I suspect a bit like things like imposter syndrome, it's probably one of those things where the feeling probably won't go away and you just have to live with it. But I just think it's a wonderful song.
There's always so much to learn with the Power Platform, isn't there? So always new things coming out every month, and you never feel like you know everything about about all the different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. My plan is to sing us out. You did say you were looking forward to this.
I'm
We
looking
could just
forward to
you could put one of
looking
us on
forward to
mute.
listening. I'm not going to join in though. You don't want me singing on your podcast.
You never know. I've got my guitar out, so it's my lovely little GS Mini. Can you hear this okay? Because it'll be going through the AirPods.
Yeah, I can hear my
Okay.
end.
Okay, that's fine. We'll say it's okay. I have climbed highest mountain. I have run through the fields only to be with you. Only to be with you. I have run, I have crawled, I have scaled these city walls, only to be with you. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. That's obviously not the whole song.
Fantastic. Loved it.
Thanks for tuning into Power Platform This and That. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review and share it with a friend, and it helps us to grow the channel. You can find links to everything we mentioned in the show notes. We're available on YouTube and all major podcast platforms. So listen wherever you like. And if you want to connect, reach out to me, Rory Neary, on LinkedIn.